Welcome to the Field Notes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges, so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Heather Moon.
What if the most hopeful answers for modern healthcare come from places where medicine is practiced with presence, creativity, and deep respect for the human story? Today's guest brings a powerful perspective on whole person care, shaped not in a clinical office, but in some of the most extreme environments on earth. Mary Ellen Doty is a nurse practitioner, and the founder of Wilderness Medical Staffing, where she has helped deliver healthcare to remote communities facing profound environmental and resource challenges. Her upcoming book, Medicine at 50 Below, releasing February 11th, shares stories from the front lines of wilderness medicine, where adaptability, prevention, and understanding of the full context of a patient's life aren't optional, they're essential. Mary Ellen's work reflects many of the core principles of functional medicine: resilience, systems thinking, and caring for the whole human, especially when the conditions are far from ideal. We're honored today, and I am so thankful to welcome Mary Ellen Doty to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Heather.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your being here. For those who may not be familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about how you became a nurse and then a nurse practitioner, founded Wilderness, and then went on to be an author?
Sure. So, my purpose in life started when I was 12 years old, and I knew I wanted to go into medicine. And, sometimes it takes a while to kind of get that purpose, and sometimes it takes a while, especially for people like me, to circle back and actually fulfill that purpose. That I knew that was the reason I was put on the earth. But I took many side roads, including, a marriage and, having children and, what have you. And so finally found my way back into school at Montana State University, I'm from Montana, and got my bachelor's in nursing, was in psychiatric nursing for 2 or 3 years, went into then more community health, and I was became director of nursing at the Montana Migrant Farm Worker project. So I worked with migrant farm workers and their families for a number of years. Realized I had reached the top of what I could do with that degree. And so that was in 1992. I went back and became a nurse practitioner. At that time there wasn't a program in Montana, so I went to the University of Missouri at Columbia and spent 2 years there. And directly out of school, needed a job with loan repayment because I was broke. And so I took a job in Bush, Alaska, in Tanana, Alaska, which is 150 air miles west northwest of Fairbanks. And so that's kind of where the story begins, right? I had no idea what I was getting into, and I was green. I mean, I was really green when I went out there. And the book, Medicine at 50 Below, talks about that. It kind of tells that story, if you will. But I ended up there being the only medical provider in the village, and I was there for 5 years. So yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it was I became part of the community. The community embraced me. I embraced them. Um, it was a difficult, magical, amazingly hard but rewarding time of my life. And again, I didn't know I didn't know a tenth of what I really needed to know to be out there, but I was it, and I started educating myself and going to every class and workshop, whatever that I could find. And I had an amazing administrator there, and Carla Bonney, and she told me one time in the middle of the night, when I was having so many doubts and I just didn't think I could do this. And I didn't want to do it anymore because I felt so inadequate. Not because I didn't want to be there, it just felt inadequate. And she said, if not you, who?
Mm, I love that.
Who will that be? She goes, we can't get anybody to come out. And it's true. They hadn't been able to get anybody to come out there for years. So
Mm.
and I did write about that in the book. But so that's where it all began. And I knew that I had to bring my A game, bring as much as I had to this community that didn't have anything else, that didn't have, and they'd had very poor care for years. So there was, yeah, as you know, in functional medicine, there's that kind of compilation. Compilation of issues that happen when people don't get care for a long period of time. So that, when their hypertension has not been addressed for 8 years, and when they've got diabetes or pre-diabetes, or they have heart disease, or they've not had a they've not had a mammogram for 10 years. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and it was just it was joyful, it was joyful, and so it was from there. Okay, you asked about wilderness medical too, right? Because
Yeah,
from
just your kind of your origin story, how you started and how you got to where you are now, what path you took.
Sure, sure. So it took years. It took years after I left Tanana. I left there in 1999. I went out there in 94, yes, and then left in 99, and then I still had kids at home and, life to live. I went down on the Kenai Peninsula and worked in Ninilchik for a
Okay.
number of years. I think I was there for 9 years. And it was after that then that, because I'd continued to, not only was Ninilchik, it was a very rural clinic. It was on the road system, which was, that seemed like you know, that was pretty metro, for me, but coming out of the bush. But it was after that then that the story took place. I had come down to the what we call lower 48, taken a job in internal medicine because I thought I needed to somehow be in the mainstream, and I found that what I discovered with the mainstream was shocking. I
Mm.
mean, in their expectations of medical providers to hurry up, see more patients, please more patients. Let's get this thing done. Doesn't matter if you ever make eye contact with anybody, just get them in and out. So that was like the polar opposite of what I had experienced in Tanana, where I could take as much time as I could with every patient, stop before I went into that clinic exam room, had the chart in my mind. I didn't need to, catch up on that in front of the patient. So when I went into the patient, I could actually bring my presence and be present with the patient. So and then what I experienced in corporate medicine was that wasn't the case. So when I went back to Alaska, I quit that job after about a year and a half it was in Missoula, Montana. Went back to Alaska on a 6-week locum, and just I had been, even through that time in Anilchik, I had been going out and I'd locum out in Hoona, or I'd locum back in Tanana, or I'd Fort Yukon. So I knew that pretty much everywhere in that space, in that Bush, Alaska space, clinics, administrators were struggling to find people who could come in. And oftentimes the people they found were just, either um, well, there were some real good practitioners out there, but there were some who just, they would go out there and stay because they just couldn't seem to navigate the world outside of there. So there was some poor care going on. There was so lots of places with no care. That was more important than anything. And so that was just the way it was. And I ended up going to a emergency medicine conference in Dallas, yeah, Texas, it was ER boot camp. I'm sure that you're familiar with that. And so during that time, I sat at a table with a number of they were all women, I believe. Maybe there was a guy there. And anyway, they were all practitioners, every one of them saying, you know, I am stuck in this job where I work 50 weeks a year. I might get 2 weeks off, but mostly I can't because there's nobody to take my place when I leave. So I've got this leave time built up, but I can't take it. My life is unbalanced. My life is not what I wanted, and this is not the kind of medicine that I wanted to practice. And the light went on, and I'm like, I bet I could put these two things together. I bet I could marry these two, all these providers. And I thought, well, there's got to be more than that. Many providers out there who feel the same way, who want some balance in their life, and these clinics definitely need that. And so that's the way Wilderness Medical Staffing was born. And we talk about tiny, and I had no I still don't have any technology, in my brain. I don't. I have people help me with it. But I struggled through that, got a business coach, and incorporated that tiny little Wilderness Medical Staffing company, got a couple of girlfriends to help me with the first couple of jobs, and then it just kind of exploded because I'd worked all over the state. I mean, I'd worked I was working down at Southeast in that time, and I'd worked up north, and I'd worked on the peninsula. So people knew my work. People knew me and my work and trusted me. So with those relationships, I built Wilderness Medical Staffing, and then it started out very slow, and then um, that was in 2010, and then 4 years later, my son Noah, who had just graduated with his master's out of Washington State, I convinced him to come on, and he was, that young techie, super business minded, smart kid who just took it and ran with it. And then that's the way it really got started. So I mean, really got some legs under it. So there you go. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow. That it's magnificent. It's just so interesting how our paths lead us to so many different places and the epiphanies that we have, I think in unexpected places. I mean, who would have thought that you would have thought to bring these providers to the wilderness when you were there in Dallas, Texas?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I just sounds like you were really close to home here, close to Homer, Alaska.
Oh yeah. I worked in Nilchik, and then when my son went to grade school there, when he started high school, we moved to Homer. So I lived in Homer for about 5 years. And that was before Wilderness. But yeah, he went to high school there, played football, then went on to play college football. That was the same son that then later, much later, was the kind of the brains of the operation, if you will, kind of came in and really got things organized and you know, up to speed with technology and all that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's a wonderful story. Thank you so much. Um, you mentioned several themes there. One of the themes was burnout, and burnout is such a major issue in healthcare. And when I reviewed the website and some of your YouTube videos, you discussed burnout on the Wilderness website. So, how does Wilderness Medical Staffing look to change that narrative?
Well, we change it all the time. I mean, we have providers come in who they are burned out. They're burned out. We have story after story of provider who comes in. They're just done with it. They're done with being pressured into doing doing more and more with less and less staff and in less time. So it's and they're not motivated. I can tell you right now, they're not motivated by production incentives, which is seems to be the corporate medical world. Like if we throw more money at it, let's see if we, will that do it? Well, no, it doesn't. So what we do with Wilderness is we do a rotational system, as I'm sure you know. So with our places in Alaska, and we are staffing all over the state at this point in time, as well as Montana, Wyoming, have staffed a little in Idaho. We're kind of moving into that space, if you will, in Washington, and we've staffed a little in Washington too. But anyway, mostly it's Alaska, Montana, Wyoming. We rotate people in and out. So when they're there, they're able to be fully present, and they're there for a month or 6 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever that rotation happens to be. And then they go home to their homes, wherever that might be. And we have providers from really every state, I think, at this point in time. So, and then they come back again and they wrote, so that burnout really never happens. And they're able to go in fresh and really be present with those patients. And it shows with the results that we've had.
Wow. What a blessing to the patients and also to the providers. Everyone wins.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a win-win. It is a win-win. Yeah.
Wow. That's really amazing. So how do you think organizations could do better at protecting clinicians from burnout?
Sure. I've got a few, and I think we've talked about some of it. Number one is time in service. So why not rotate those providers in and out? Really, even that's one thing for sure. The second thing is just give providers time. I mean, I know we're all under a money crunch, but healthcare doesn't happen in 10 minutes. I'm sorry. It doesn't happen in 15 minutes either. It doesn't, we can't know that patient if we've got 7.5 to 15 or 20 minutes to see them. We can't. Now, sometimes people are just, they want to come in, they have a UTI, they want a quick visit. We've seen them before, big deal. But for patients where that healing really happens is between that provider, as I mean, you're in functional medicine as well. That healing happens when the provider and the patient sit together and there's that synergy that starts happening. And a provider can only do that if they've got enough time to, and again, I mean, I get it about the money. The other thing though, too, is how we treat providers. I mean, we have to treat them as the professionals that they are. And one of the things that we find with Wilderness is the providers who we work with are almost without fail those who know that purpose, they know that meaning in life, that Viktor Frankl talks about that. It's not the pursuit of happiness so much as it's a pursuit of meaning. And so, meaning in our purposeful lives, meaning in our lives. And so that can happen in a clinic anywhere. And I think the people who are hiring and staffing any clinic has to be intentional about making sure that provider feels needed and valued, because that's going to mean a whole lot more to them than another $2 an hour.
Yeah, speaking for myself, I totally agree. And it really does sound like you're getting to the heart of the matter and have verified this with yourself and also the providers that you work with and help get out to those communities in need. So I am interested in what brought about the origin or the development of your book. When did that idea come up?
That's an interesting one. I've been asked about that a few times here lately, because it's kind of it's coming out. That book is coming out. And I've had to really think about that. I mean, I had these stories which I felt were important stories kind of filed away. I have journaled for 30 years, but some of them were in journals, some of them were just lived in my soul. And I went to a workshop with Donald Miller. He's the author of Storybrand. He's kind of a pretty well-known author on business books. He's also a fictional writer, but anyway,
Hmm.
went to a weekend workshop with him, and one of the things he said that's stuck with me is um, the most important reason to write, probably anything, but for sure a book, is for self-discovery. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. What did these 30 years mean? What was this about? What was all that hard work, that working? And oh man, when honestly, anybody can tell you who puts a business together, it's a lot of work. And I worked, well, I was working full time, taking care of patients for one, and being on call, and then, writing a books. I remember one time putting a boundary around myself. I was like, okay, you can only work till 10 p.m. Then you got to shut it off. It was crazy. So all that work and all that time, and plus I knew some things about medicine by this time. I knew some things about medicine and about people who are medical providers and what they needed and what they wanted. And I felt like I had a message about that as well. So not only was I making meaning of my own life, and my own career and the things that I did, but also I felt like I had some messages to send to others as well.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the release, and it's releasing on your birthday, which is February 11th.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I
That's
chose.
exciting.
Yep.
Is there a particular story or chapter that lingers with you emotionally?
Yes, there are several, honestly, but I I think I want to talk about that first chapter where I was traveling out to the bush and how incredibly foreign it seemed to me. Everything was foreign. The bush plane, the small bush plane was foreign, landing on a gravel airstrip, meeting people there who were pure and genuinely grateful to see me and welcoming. And in my mind, I couldn't even breathe. I was so panicked. I'm like, can I do this? Should I stay here? Can I get out of here? Is there
Mm.
any way? These people think I'm somebody who I'm not. I don't know anything. I mean, all those things rushed into my mind as I was landing in Canada and as I was, and the first few days as well. And I was just like, these people think I know what I'm doing, and I don't. And I'll do my best, but I feel so incredibly inadequate that I just wanted to leave. And fortunately, I was too broke to leave. I
Mm.
had, I had borrowed money to get there. And then of course the tribal council paid me back for that. But originally I'd borrowed money from my daughter, for goodness sake, to get up to Alaska and to make that long, long journey. And only to get there, put my feet on the ground and just want to run because I just felt so incredibly unsure of myself and inadequate for the job. And I think that is the beauty of that place when I look back on it. That if I had not been there, I would not have gotten to grow as a human being. I would not have gotten to grow as a practitioner, but also just as a human being and learning the things that I did. So I'm just so incredibly grateful for all that, I'm grateful for being broke, too broke to leave. You know, there's some really thinks there's something to be said about that.
Is there someone that you are hoping unexpectedly that this book is helpful for?
Yes. Providers, medical providers. I can't tell you how often medical providers will get a hold of wilderness medical staffing and go, aha, I've been looking for this forever.
Yeah.
So I hope that that happens more as well. But also
Mhm.
at administrators who might go, oh, maybe they can tweak a few things in the way they recruit and the way they staff that maybe dovetails in with those medical providers with that sense of purpose more than what they'd been doing. I mean, let's give a shout out right here to administrators because they're the ones that lose sleep at night wondering how they're going to staff those clinics and they're responsible for that community that they care of or care for. So, yeah.
Yep. Shout out to our administrators. Thank you. What if remote settings taught you about the relationship between the environment, stress, and health?
In the northern climates, I mean, that life is much more stressful because of the survival issue. I
Right.
mean, I was so interesting. I remember this. I took all the books that I could find with me when I went up to town and all, because that was before the days of internet, and you can just go on up to date and look something up. And it was a wilderness medical manual, and the first paragraph on Arctic medicine, the first sentence was, "Man is a tropical animal."
Wow, a tropical animal.
We are. We don't have hair all over our bodies. We can't survive in the Arctic climates unless we're bundled up like crazy and, Eddie Bauer parkas. We're not going to survive. So there's that. I mean, of course, that in itself is a stressor because it's survival in a harsh climate. And
Right.
so, of course, that's a stressor. Um, it's also a blessing in that it's impossible to survive there by yourself.
Mm. Oh, wow. I
It
love
takes
that.
it takes a village. It takes a community. It takes a community being a family, and that's exactly what I found there. It takes togetherness, and it doesn't happen in a one person is not going to survive well. They're not going to survive well there physically, but they're not going to survive well there mentally. Whereas if you've got a community, there's so much joy in it. There's so much joy. There's that work together. There's that kind of, especially in those um, really remote places, there's all this ego that just kind of drops away. And
Oh, yeah.
and it's about caring for one another and keeping one another safe and alive and healthy and um, whole.
Wow. Really good messages, really valuable lessons that I imagine only can be learned by having experienced those things.
That's the way I learned it.
Yeah. Yeah. um, So for people who feel burned out in their own lives, are there some principles that wilderness medicine can be that they can bring into their own lives from wilderness medicine to help restore balance?
Sure. That's exactly what that's the word. It's balance and it's I think it's uh for me at least, and for the providers, I know many of our providers, it's that it's making boundaries. So
Okay.
you have a boundary. I'm going to work this month. I'm going to be all in. And then when I go home, I'm going to let go. And that's what I have providers tell me over and over again. My life balance is so incredible now because when I'm at work, I'm really at work. When I'm
Mhm.
home, I'm really at home. And that can happen whether or not you're working or living in the same town or the same location. I mean, you don't have to travel in and out to do that. It's just that making sure that we have a cutoff, that we have time for ourselves and our families and our friends and our dogs and whoever else is important in our lives.
Yeah. And ourselves in
Mhm.
particular. Yeah. Caregivers, we often overlook ourselves.
True.
Wow. Well, it's been such a pleasure, and I could ask you questions all morning. For listeners who would like to know more and also look into your book, Wilderness Medicine at 50 Below,
Medicine.
where can listeners and readers find you?
They can buy the book at MaryEllenDoty.com. They can also find me and the company at wildernessmedicalstaffing.com.
Awesome.
So that's probably the best. And social media, I'm kind of digging into that. I know literally nothing about it, but I'm learning and I'll answer people as best I can.
Oh,
So
that's how I got in touch with you. Sounds like you need to recruit Noah.
yeah, yes, yeah. He's got a few things on his plate, so
Cool.
yeah.
Wow. All right. Wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.